Hi, this is Teacher Jennifer from U.S. Citizenship Podcast. Every week, we bring you practice interviews, quizzes, and the latest news that help you get ready for your U.S. citizenship interview. Today, we will continue our series, The U.S. Citizenship and the U.S. Census 2020. Every 10 years, the federal government is required to count all residents in the United States, citizens and non-citizens alike, through a national census. The next national census is in April 2020. The information is used to make sure everyone is equally represented in our political system and that government resources are allocated fairly. It is also used to make important decisions about community programs and services, like where to build homes and parks, establish public transit routes, build new roads, and offer language access services. Participating in the census is a civic responsibility for citizens and non-citizens, similar to paying taxes and educating ourselves and our children. In certain situations, people can refuse to pay taxes or send their children to school, but they cannot ignore what is happening in the community. We must learn the facts, and we must make our decisions accordingly. Today I will interview Aparna Ramakrishnan from the San Mateo Census team about their Census Ambassador program. The San Mateo County is partnering with the San Mateo Adult School to launch a Census Ambassador training program, which will be launched across the county in fall 2019. You can learn more by going to the San Mateo County Census 2020 homepage. Go to smccensus.org. Next Monday, I will post the podcast that I recorded at the San Mateo Adult School with the Census Ambassadors. And over the next several weeks, I will be chopping up the audio from both of these podcasts into smaller bits and posting the subtitled videos to the U.S. Citizen Pod YouTube channel. Let's get started. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Okay. Hello, my name is Aparna Ramakrishnan, and I am part of the Census 2020 team at the San Mateo County Office of Community Affairs.
And you're partnering with San Mateo Adult School for their Census Ambassador program. First of all, you did an outstanding job presenting the information.
Thank you.
Secondly, you did an outstanding job telling what people can do with the information. And I thought that's why your website was so important. Just excited to talk to you more about that.
Thank you.
So, how long have you been on the job?
So I joined the San Mateo County Census team in late September 2018, so coming up on a year. But prior to that, I was working with San Mateo County as well as other counties in California on the local update of census addresses, which occurred the summer before. So summer of 2018, I worked with a nonprofit that helped do community-based address canvassing in partnership with these counties, local funders, and community-based organizations.
So are you coming more from a data background or a community organization background?
Academically, I am a master's in social work and community organizing. I also have a master's in anthropology. So I've often worked kind of at that intersection between communities and inclusion and diversity. A lot of my career has actually been in public health and health communications for behavior change. So that has influenced and really, I think, given me some perspective and skills to approach census. So I'm basically taking what I did in public health to encourage people to make healthy decisions and to prevent disease, and really thinking about kind of similar challenges that people have in understanding information, being able to make an informed decision, really understanding and then actually act on those decisions, right? Because there's different steps involved in taking action.
You came in September. What was the first thing that you needed to address when you came in?
The San Mateo County team had already been doing work prior to the local update of census addresses, and they had a lot of great foundation already. And so when I came in, I really was starting to think a bit more about a couple of things. One is what is the strategic framework for trying to ensure a complete count? And so the pieces of that included at the very top coordination, because this is not a county-only effort, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to really think about, well, what is the Census Bureau and other national partners going to be doing? What is the state doing? Because as you know, the state is putting a lot of resources into this as well. What are the counties within our region doing, right? So that, as well as how do we work with all the cities within the county? So we were thinking through, okay, what's the coordination piece look like? We also wanted to build a collaborative structure to really get the buy-in, the engagement, and the support of all of our community leaders that are already working with a lot of communities that need to learn more about census. So we created a complete count committee as well as a county steering committee.
The complete count committee, that's at the county level or the city level?
It's at the county level.
County level.
One of the first things we did once the Board of Supervisors approved our strategic plan and framework was to form a steering committee, which includes leaders of the county departments as well as city managers from areas that have high concentrations of historically hard to count communities, and representatives from our different elected officials, so to make sure we had coverage there. The complete count committee, which kind of works closely with this other committee, includes executive directors and leaders of community-based organizations, nonprofits, business associations. SAMCETA, which is the San Mateo Economic Development Association, is a co-chair, as is Thrive, which is our alliance of nonprofits here in San Mateo.
How did you connect up with San Mateo Adult School?
We know that adult schools are places where our immigrant families go for a lot of services, a lot of support, and we know that immigrants tend to be one of the highest undercounted populations for many reasons, right? And even more so because we were worried about the citizenship question. So as we were thinking through important partners to have at the table, adult schools, community colleges, service providers, those were all on the top of our list. And we had a connection at the San Mateo Adult School. And so when we met with Stephanie Kriebel over there, we were talking about kind of just a very high level, like here are all the different things we're thinking about, and brainstorming. And I had mentioned that we were hoping to develop an ambassador program where residents could volunteer to become resources and leaders in their community. And right away, she perked up and said, oh, we have some students that I think would be great, and it would be really a win-win because they would be learning very specifically about census and civic engagement, but also developing skills and experience that they could use in their personal and professional lives moving forward, right? And that's actually something I love about census. One, everyone can be counted and everyone has a stake, right? It's very rare that we have issues that we can all get behind that are important to all of us. But two, I really think it's an opportunity to build capacity and skills for organizing and being able to become a civic leader. And I would love to see more of our new immigrants become civic leaders.
Okay, so I think this is very interesting because when the information about the census first came out, a lot of my students were excited because they had mathematics backgrounds in their own country. And they went to apply to do census taking, and they said, we're sorry, you're not a citizen yet. They are legal residents, but we have no positions for you. I think the Census Ambassador program is really good because you don't necessarily have to be a citizen, but these people are making connections everywhere. So the fact that you were able to rethink this and provide a bridge to the adult schools and I'm sure to the community colleges as well. Are you doing outreach to the high schools too as well?
We hope to. We hope to. We have, as part of our complete count committee, there are different strategy work groups that are thinking about different opportunities for engaging different segments of our community, and one of them is a youth engagement strategy work group.
Okay, that's great.
In fact, yesterday I was at the Boys and Girls Club in Daly City speaking with a group of youth who are already thinking about how they're going to do census outreach.
That's great.
And again, I think it's a great opportunity because This is important for our democracy. It's important for understanding how community works and how to get more resources to our communities. And so they were very interested and excited about that. So I spent some time working with them, and I hope that we can adapt this training for the ambassadors also for youth groups.
What is the mission of the Census Ambassador?
The Census Ambassador, their role is to help spread the word about Census 2020 and to educate and encourage their fellow community members to participate. I think that adult school students have lots of networks that they're developing and building. Some may be where they live, some may be where they work, some may be where they learn at the adult school. And so their role is to really be that resource so that people understand what it is, because it is required, right? So to make sure that everyone...
It's part of our civic duty,
Exactly.
like paying taxes.
Yeah. So it's making sure they understand, what is it? What do I need to do? And if I need help, where do I go? Right? Those are the three things we really want them to be able to explain to people in the language and in kind of the tone and the voice that's appropriate, right? I mean, when you're talking to your friends and your family and your colleagues and your neighbors, you really have a good sense of what they care about, what the questions are going to be, what the concerns are going to be. And so we want these ambassadors to be able to address those concerns and provide accurate, up-to-date information so people can make an informed decision about whether to participate or not. And then, again, if they need support, if they need language support or digital support, they can help them access that support. We don't expect them to provide the support or to count anybody or to help them fill out the questionnaire, but we want them to be that resource and that civic leader.
Yeah, it's like, I know someone who knows somebody.
Exactly.
When I was talking to the students, they were sharing their own experiences with the census in their own communities, and that was interesting to hear. A lot of people have concerns about this information is going to be shared with ICE, or the information will be shared beyond their control. And the whole point of the census, I think, it's not about you personally, it's about us as a community. So I think that's something that's going to be very important. It's one thing if a teacher says it, but it's another thing if a person says it, somebody you know personally. So you have the training manual right here. Is there anything that you want to say about it, or do you want to talk your way through it?
I'm happy to walk through kind of the key elements. We're still planning on revising it based on all the great feedback we got from our pilot group. They were really helpful. But basically, we started off by making sure that all the ambassadors understood the key aspects of Census 2020, right? What is it? Why is it required? When and where will it happen? How can residents participate? How will the information collected be used, to your point just now? And how is that information protected? How does it maintain confidentiality, right? And then once they have that basic understanding of what the census is, we wanted to build on that so that they would be able to explain why participating in Census 2020 is important based on the people they're talking to. So what is important to the person you're talking to? What is going to be compelling and relevant and persuade them to consider this. We also wanted them to understand how to approach and engage community members, right? So what are different things you can do beyond just connecting it to something you know, so that people aren't afraid, they don't feel defensive. It's kind of informational. Hey, I want to share something with you that's really important to know about. And how do you do that in a way that's respectful and that builds interaction rather than a one-way, let me tell you this, let me tell you this, let me tell you this, right? We also just wanted to make sure that they had materials they could use when they do outreach.
So let's see so let's see some of the materials. Some of the materials I see, for instance, you have the Census 2020 or what you need to know. I saw that you had this up on your website. And it's very, very easy, where you're showing the community, you're showing how people are going to be responding online or paper, and then what happens after that. So very, very elegant. Of course, there are going to be links to everything.
Yes, and everything's on our website. And this Census 2020, what you need to know, we also have in Spanish and Chinese, and we're going to be developing a lot of other materials in different languages. This right now is a 2-pager with a lot of graphics. We're also creating a version of this that's just one page, but bilingual. So you'll have English on one side and another language on the other, because we heard back from the ambassadors that that would be very helpful to them. So we have that. We, of course, spent a lot of time reviewing the actual census questionnaire so folks understood what it was. And we also shared with the ambassadors a number of resources that the Census Bureau has provided. I mean, they have a huge campaign that they're going to be rolling out. And so they're developing materials in 13 languages. They're going to be having videos. They've already started. So there's a ton there.
Yeah, their YouTube channel is really good. And also their lesson plans are really amazing too. And what impresses me about San Mateo, you've really taken the mandate from the counties and have run with it. And once I saw your website, I'm like, well, what's happening in my own county website? What's happening? So I started taking a look at some major counties throughout the United States. That stuff is not up there on their websites. I'm sorry to say. San Mateo is a leader. They're providing outreach materials. So.
Well, that's great to hear, but I'm sure the other counties will have stuff up soon as they become developed. I think that we're all working hard to build a foundation, and the hope is that by fall we're all in really good shape so that people can easily find information. And the good news is, actually, I mean, there's not a lot about census that's San Mateo specific, right? This is a national effort.
Absolutely.
So this is all able to be used by anybody.
So here you have a great PDF from United States Census about confidentiality, how you're invited to respond.
And then we have also developed an actual messaging guide, which is on our website.
Which is really amazing, yes.
Thank you. And on there, you'll kind of see answers to frequently asked questions. And I also actually built this out more based on feedback from our ambassador pilot program, because they asked a lot of additional questions. And I said, this is great. Let's add it to these. So we have frequently asked questions. We also created these message maps.
This is wonderful.
Thank you. And really, because we are realizing that sometimes you don't have a lot of time when you talk to somebody, and you gotta get them their answers quickly, and you have to keep them interested. And so message mapping is something that is used a lot to be able to provide key messages, and then if you have time, supporting points, right?
You have 4 or 5 questions. Okay, so the first one, what to say if asked about why participation in Census 2020 matters. What to say if asked who should be counted in Census 2020. What to say if asked how everyone will be counted in Census 2020, and what to say if asked about the privacy of the data collected for 2020, and what to say if asked about the Census 2020 Citizenship Question. Now,
I will have to update this one.
This was wonderful. However, do you mind taking your favorite one and just go through one of the key messages, because it's really helpful. On each page, she basically has 3 key messages and how you can pulls out the supporting points for them. Okay, so which one are you going to do?
Let's do, I think, the one that most people want to know is why does participation in Census 2020 matter? Okay. So our first key message really is that standing up for Census 2020 national count is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, your family, and your community. Okay. And to support that message, it's helpful to share with people that the national census is how we make sure that everyone has equal representation in government and everyone gets their fair share of government resources. Unlike voting, every single person, regardless of age, citizenship status, or criminal history, can participate and should be counted in the national census. And by making sure you and everyone you know participates, you can raise your collective voice and help bring support to your community, including jobs, housing, schools, public transportation, and health services.
Okay, great. And then you have 2 more key messages that will follow up on that and support in the supporting points. Again, this is really excellent because you're going to address maybe a senior citizen or somebody who works in the tech industry or somebody who's a union member. You're going to address these people differently, and here you already have these points laid out.
And that's a good point. I mean, these message maps are really used to be kind of foundational general messaging. We really hope people will take this and tailor it and tweak it so that it makes the most sense, that it's the most compelling to whomever they're speaking to.
Yeah.
But we don't want anyone to have to scramble or, recreate the wheel. We want folks to feel comfortable and confident when they talk about it and have their kind of elevator pitch ready so they know, hey, if I have 30 seconds, here are the 3 things I want to get across. If I have a minute, I could maybe add a little bit more, right?
So now can I tell you how an adult school teacher would take a look at this? Well, or maybe Stephanie has already talked about this. They would take this and maybe change it, simplify the language, make it more ESLEs.
Sure.
But they might post this throughout the school, or they might do listening exercises with this, or they might ask people to give examples of the certain points, either through writing or through graphic representation. They might even do build a Kahoot from this, or online gaming. So,
that sounds really fun. I'd love to see that.
One of the things that I do is with citizenship questions throughout our school is on one side, I might have the question, and then you flip up and you have the answer. So I might take something like this, turn these things into a question and answer series. Because we're in a school that has a long row of lockers, and people walk by and flip the 100 questions as they're going to and from the bathroom to make the journey last a little bit longer.
Oh, I love it.
But it's also a tactile thing, and they do pick up language that way. So I think people could really take a look at these maps that you've created and really turn that into something really great for their adult schools.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
We are also...
You know what? Somebody's live tweeting their oath ceremony. They're in an area where they cannot have any citizenship teachers. So they watched all the videos, and now they're live tweeting their oath ceremony. Okay,
That's so awesome.
Anyway.
That's super awesome.
Okay.
So what we've done so far is really kind of develop this foundational messaging. And then what we did with the students is once they'd absorbed this messaging is to practice and kind of think through so that they're prepared. So we did role play exercises. We did scenarios. We did a lot of group brainstorming and thinking and a lot of feedback so that, again, I think the goal is that people feel confident and comfortable.
See, we love to do that. Do you have an example of a role play or a scenario?
I do. Here we go. Here's one.
Okay.
Should we read it?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So one of the scenarios was Juan shares information about Census 2020 with his faith group. The next day, he runs into one of the group members, Matthew, at the store. Matthew tells Juan that he's not sure he will fill out the census questionnaire because he lives in a converted garage. He's worried that he will get in trouble because the unit is not permitted. He has a hard time believing that his information will not be shared with local government agencies. So, unfortunately, we live in a time and a location where people get creative about their living situation.
Very creative, yes.
And
that's a big problem.
And so people are worried about this. So we want to make sure that all our scenarios are addressing things we know they're going to come across. We don't want them to be caught unprepared, and we want them to really know, like, how are they going to address this?
Okay.
And so what we would ask the students to do in pairs is to think through, like, what questions might Matthew, the person who has the concern, ask? And then how can Juan address those concerns? And so they kind of go through this discussion to think about what are the questions, what are the possible answers, write out a brief script, and then take turns role-playing so that each of them gets a sense of being the person with a concern and the person who's trying to address it, kind of come up with a little bit of a script, and then they role-play it to the larger group to get feedback on what worked, what didn't, what would other people suggest doing, what are some ideas. And I think doing this more and more really builds that confidence so that when they approach their friends, their neighbors, their colleagues, they come across also confident.
Okay, so step 1 is to discuss those questions. Step 2 is to write out the script. Step 3 is to do the role playing. Step 4 is to make adjustments to the script. Step 5 is to role play the scenario for the larger group. And step 6 is the group discussion. So go ahead, if you could read those follow-up questions.
Sure. The group discusses together what worked well or didn't work well. Was there anything missing that wasn't shared or might have been asked? And what would you have done differently, if anything? You know, and it gives people a chance to step into the shoes of the community members they're going to talk to and really think about how to address their concerns, how to be empathetic, how to be respectful, but also to provide, again, that accurate, actionable information. And so that's the other piece we talked a lot about in our group is, great, it's now July 2019. The census is in April 2020. So what can we ask people to do at this point? And so we really thought through, like, what is reasonable? What do we want people to be able to do, you know, besides learning more about the census and thinking about participation? One of the things that we came up with was a pledge that we drafted that really is a very basic, I pledge to participate in Census 2020 because, and there's 3 reasons about.
So you're the ambassador. You've approached me. You say, are you going to do the census?
What we think is going to work well and based on the feedback of the ambassadors, because part of the training wasn't just classroom training. Part of it was field practice.
Okay.
So we had our ambassadors at International Night, the San Mateo Adult School, go out and practice and see what worked and what didn't, and we're using that feedback to also finalize all the materials. But what our pilot group has found really helpful is to be able to have a question or two to ask people to engage them before they ask them to pledge. So first thing they're asking folks is, have you heard about Census 2020? And if
I would say yes.
If they say yes, they say, great, what have you heard about it? Right?
I heard about the citizenship question. I'm really scared.
Well, the good news is there won't be a citizenship question on the Census 2020, right?
But how do we know it's not going to be shared with other people, our information?
Well, there are many protections in place to make sure that your individual information isn't shared at all. First of all, they take steps to secure the data.
Okay.
Everyone at the Census Bureau takes an oath so that they can't share the information for their whole life.
Wow.
The Census Bureau also doesn't share information with other federal agencies or local governments, so it's really kept very private. They use statistical methods to scramble up the data, so you can't go back and look at the data and figure out whose is whose.
So can they find me?
It's extremely highly unlikely.
Okay.
But I don't like to give anyone guarantees because
you never know.
You never know. But I would say they take every step possible. The protections are incredibly strong, and the intention is really to only use the information for statistical purposes, right? It's to have data so we can understand our communities better, so we can make better decisions about where to put funding, so that people get the services they need, so that programs are in the right places and in the right languages.
Yeah, great. Is there anything else in the binder that we missed?
Let's see. So the scenarios.
And are you making these scenarios available or not?
I will be.
Oh, okay.
I will be. We're gonna have the whole guide eventually on the website.
Can people go ahead and contact you?
They can reach out to that SMC_census email, and we'll definitely be able to answer questions. In addition to preparing people to engage and educate and answer questions, we wanted to give them a little bit of training on how to do outreach, how to plan for outreach. So there was a brainstorming worksheet just to help them think through people in their community that may have influence or networks that they want to use to share information, as well as places they might go within their community to share information. And then based on that brainstorming, they were asked to create an outreach plan. So we provided a grid that would help them think through who they want to reach, where or how they'll reach them, when or how they plan to reach out, what they need to do to prepare, and then what they're going to ask them to do, right? Really kind of planning it all out. And then we also provided a tracking grid so that they could come back and say, hey, this month I talked to this many people, I got this many pledges, because they're trying to get people to pledge, and then really kind of provide the information of who they talk to, what organization or community they belong to, how and when they reached them and where, if they had any main concerns or questions, and what they agreed to do. And then their next steps.
There's no contact information on here, correct?
Not on here.
Okay.
The contact information we're collecting through the pledge.
Okay.
So what we're asking people is, 1, have you heard about the census? And if they haven't, making sure they understand. 2, would they pledge to take the census in 2020? And if so, they can sign our pledge form, and they can provide an email or a phone number to get a reminder for Census 2020, and then they give us a sense of how they are planning to respond on the phone, online, or in paper.
One question that came up, because even though we're in Santa Clara County, a lot of our students do not have ready access to computers, but they can do everything through their phones.
Oh yeah, the census will be mobile.
Oh, it'll be mobile. Okay, yeah. Great. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, we're just
amazing. You've done amazing work.
Thank you.
And I really want to share this, and I think encourage adult schools and citizenship students to contact their own communities and say, hey, is there anything happening in our community? We can make that happen. So we can help you. Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear that. And I know, our next steps and our hope is that once we can finalize what the training portion looks like, we're also thinking through, well, how do we make sure this gets spread? And whether it's, through hopefully other adult schools, community colleges, but also high schools, like youth groups, faith groups, and even other civic groups, because as we know, we also have elections coming up around the same timeline. So we really want to think about kind of that joint civic duty message, and how can an organization like the League of Women Voters, right? How can they, when they're talking about voting, talk about census, and vice versa, so that we're really encouraging people in all the ways they can to be engaged and to, support their communities.
Well, I really hope unions are really good, but
that too.
One of the things that really impressed me about your website was you already had a social media packet out. You already had pictures ready to go. You already had the messages, and rocking the social media sphere will really help too.
I hope so. And I think that you'll also see that the Census Bureau and the state are going to do a lot of social and digital outreach. But I think the reason we've got the social media guide and the messaging guide already is because we've been engaging a lot of people. We know that there's interest. We know that there's support. And so we want to make sure we don't create extra work for anybody. We want to make this really easy so that it's kind of plug and play. If you have all these existing channels for communication and outreach, no need to create more. I think, the important thing is to integrate census, and the easier we make it to integrate census, the better for all of us.
Exactly what you say. Some people simply need a pattern. They have all the ideas, but they don't have the pattern. You have the pattern. Exactly what you say. Plug and play. They can do what they need.
Yeah, and also, but tailor it so it works, right? I mean, each organization, each individual on social media has their own voice, their own style, their own preferences, right, for how to communicate. And this is just kind of foundational so that you can take information, you can massage it and tweak it and put it out there in ways that make sense, because each of us has different folks that we reach that trust us. And the important thing is that people are getting information from multiple sources, but also from trusted sources. So we want to make sure the census message is swirling all around from all different directions, so that when April rolls around and hopefully they see the postcard they're going to get in the mail, it's a very quick, I know exactly what this is. I know what I'm supposed to do. It's going to take me 5 to 10 minutes. Let me just take care of it. I mean, that's really the hope.
So when I got it in 2010, I did a podcast. So it was a live reading of me opening the census.
I love it.
Yeah, and then I made it took about 20 minutes. But then because I was reading it.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah, but I did a live reading of me, and the Census 2010 is very similar to the Census 2020. It's very, very, I was describing the envelope, I was sharing where the QR code was and everything like that.
It.
And then I made a 4-minute version of that whole thing. But.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, I really like your video comparing the two. Are we able to edit it down just to have what's on Census 2020?
Sure.
As like a shorter video?
Sure, I can do that. You can do that. Or I can give, why not?
I think that would be really helpful because not everyone's going to be applying for citizenship or for naturalization.
Absolutely.
But just having those basics of, well, here are the questions. And I love the way you did it because it was just really simple. It's really simple. And people don't need fancy all the time. They just need to understand. And so if you are able to do that, we would love to share it with folks.
Well, I would be happy to do that. One of the hardest things for students, they were confused about the head of the household or the number one person. My number one in my little family unit, but do I talk about this whole family unit? Because in Milpitas, there's a lot of families that are doubled and tripled up in one household.
It's interesting you say that because that was one of our sticking points in the ambassador pilot training. Is every time we use the word household, people were getting tripped up.
Really?
Because one, like what a household looks like has changed dramatically over time, thankfully.
Yes.
And so we've got very diverse households. Some with lots of people, some with not so many people, some with people of different genders, some with, and so people are like, well, what does this mean? So I ended up just pulling different definitions so our ambassadors could understand what does the Census Bureau mean by household and what really needs to go here. But I think that's a really important point that we have to simplify because we can get people to the point of agreeing and wanting to participate, but then we have to overcome some of their challenges, whether it's access or just understanding the census questionnaire is another piece because I know a lot of people have questions about how do you define a household or a head of household or even like how do I choose my race, ethnicity, right?
Well, in 2010, this came up with one of my students. She says, one of my older senior citizens says, I'm not interested in this. And I said, why? She goes, my son will take care of it for me. I go, has your son ever done anything without your advice? And she goes, no. Does he have time to take care of everything in his house? No. You're here to learn about this. You tell your son. I thought it was really important because I've seen a lot of our immigrant seniors, they're displaced in their own household.
It's a shifting dynamic within the family.
And it's hard. It's a way to reassert themselves in their household. And because they have life experiences, they've been through census before, they know what this stuff is about.
Right.
They also see sometimes that people don't pay attention because they're so busy taking care of other things here.
Right.
So here, this is a way that they can step up. Same with teenagers. They're going to be able to step up and do the same thing for their families, too.
Well, anyone 15 or older can fill out the census.
Ooh, I did not
15.
know that.
I know.
Yeah.
We made sure to ask that question because we know we have a lot of youth groups that are interested.
Yeah.
And I think youth are going to be an amazing resource, not only in making sure their own families fill out the census, but being educators and leaders because it's their future we're talking about, right? These numbers from this count are going to affect us for 10 years.
Well, and that's something exactly they can say to their parents.
Exactly. It's their future.
We're counting. We are making this decision to be counted because our kids are going to benefit from this count. We're going to have another high school because everybody was counted. All the kids were counted here.
Well, I was just thinking of a little slogan here.
Yeah.
We're counting on you to make sure we all count.
Thanks to the students and staff of Milpitas Adult School and the San Mateo Adult School. A special shout out goes to Aprina from the San Mateo County Census 2020 team. To learn more about the San Mateo Census team, go to smccensus.org. Next Monday, I will post the podcast that I recorded at the San Mateo Adult School with the Census Ambassadors. If you need to learn more about citizenship, visit us at uscitizenpod.com or visit our YouTube channel at uscitizenpod. Thanks for listening. I know you will be a great American citizen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.